Hey, love. So glad that you are joining us for Love Streaming, Black and Brown Voices of Healing. And I'm so delighted to introduce you to Jaaz Jones. It's so fun because your daughter was, I think, the first person that I interviewed, or the second that I, well, not interviewed, that I hosted. And so welcome, Mama.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. So great to be here with you.
I'm so happy to have you here. So I'd love you to share, we were talking a little bit about where you and I first met, and you're also going to share about your new book and the magic and all this stuff. So
just all that stuff that's going on. Yeah. When you and I first met, what an experience. This was in December, launching the holiday, spending time with my daughter. And we decided as a mother-daughter moment to come and do a fire walk with you. And that was so phenomenal because I had done one before, but to share that experience with my daughter. And it wasn't just the fire walk. It was what you spoke to. I don't even know if you remember what you were talking about, but you know, everything that you were dealing with in your relationship and all that was going on, and you stood up on the chair and you were talking about standing on your story. I was like, yes, girl, yes. And it was really about owning your story rather than being suffocated by it. And that was so powerful because that's so much of what my work is around, is really identifying the story. Matter of fact, that's what we're going to dive into and talk about a little bit, is about that story. So that was a powerful experience. And again, to do that with my daughter and to know that together we can walk, if we can walk through fire, we can get through anything.
So true. And you both have in such beautiful ways, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Good. Okay, so I'm going to go off screen. Everyone, welcome Jaaz, and just gratitude for being with us. And I'll be in the background monitoring the chat, and I'll see you on the other side.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And it is such a delight and pleasure to be with each of you in this moment. And I really honor you in this time and space, and especially this time that we're in. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is really about our ability to shift this energy. There has been so much energy evolving. We've been on a roller coaster, and I want to pose a question to you. How many of you in the midst of this new day, this new time, have found yourself, your energy being perhaps suppressed, feeling a little bit off, and maybe not able to focus, but just felt like, I'm feeling a little bit off? I know I have. It's, you know, remembering, oh, let me make sure I put a mask on when I go out. And, you know, how many of us were stuck inside and sheltering in, and all of a sudden you realized how much you really wanted to be out and socializing. And whatever that dynamic is, it's really coming to understand and connect with, it's all energy. Everything is energy. And what I have found so dynamic in the midst of the change that's taking place in the world, there are those individuals who are encompassed by fear, and they're operating out of that fear base. And if you're one of those, that's okay. Wherever you are, here's the true thing that I really hold, and that is, wherever you are is perfect. Because wherever we are at any given time is the only place that we can be. The power is in being present to that, being present to the moment of where we are, what we're feeling, what's going on within us, and to connect with that. And what I invite you to do is to just really connect with those feelings. And there's been a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling that's taken place in the midst of this pandemic. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and as the whole world came to a standstill, we all began to experience, not just experience, but to witness man's inhumanity against man, woman. And there's been an outcry, a pour outcry of bringing us back to a place of humanity, our ability to reconnect with one another and to just be in this place of what I'm going to say is compassion, and that everyone can have their position, and my position does not have to alter or disrupt yours, nor should yours alter or disrupt mine. So speaking that from a place of energy, and that's really the work that I practice is as an energy empowerment coach and transformation specialist. And one of the things as a practitioner that I always coach my students in and I speak to is that my energy is mine and everything else is its. I will not put my energy upon you, and I will not allow your energy to be placed upon me. Whatever I am here to do and to serve, my energy will guide me, that divine energy. And we have been in this place where our energy has become static and frayed, and emotions are on high, and also those on high emotions have been some suppressed and some exploding. So how do we get through it all? How do we deal with it? For me personally, it has been really focusing on what I call, and it's time to get real, it's time to shift our shit. That was my intentional focus. And so last year, I was a part of a collaborative book entitled Women Who Illuminate. And that was really what I wrote about and spoke to, was being in the midst of the discomfort, the shitty feelings, that how do I shift this? How do I go from all of these negative feelings, or how do I go from limited beliefs to being empowered or embracing where I am? And it was all about looking at that shift. And so actually shifting our shit is an acronym, and the shit really stands for our story, which is why when I spoke to you a minute ago, Heather, when I was talking about the power of standing on our story, and what you so articulated when you were sharing your experience before we did the fire walk. What are we carrying into the fire? And let me tell you, everybody, we are all walking through fire right now. Whether whether you're doing a fire walk or not, literally, figuratively, we are all walking through fire. And the way we get through the fire, it begins with, what's the story that I'm telling myself? What's the story that I'm telling myself as I take that walk? What story am I carrying with me? Because that story that I'm carrying with me, it can cause me to burn, or it can cause me to just keep moving forward. So really first beginning to connect with the story. And then the next thing is being aware of what are the habits that I have become accustomed to. What are those habits I don't even think about? Those are the defaults. And that is our reactions. When we look at what's taking place in the world right now, and Heather, I want to thank you so much for inviting me in to be a part of this conversation. But when I look at the death of George Floyd and the subsequent reactions to, so many reactions are a default to our habits, our habitual way of thinking, and how we show up. And so I'd ask you to be mindful of what are some of those default habits. And then the next thing is the influence. And everything is an influence. And the influence is, what are we putting into our minds? What are we putting into our hearts? What are we putting into our bodies? What are we putting into our souls? Everything that we receive, that we bring in, is an influence. So it's not just the individuals that we connect with. It's, what are you watching right now? You're here connecting with me, right? We're talking about transformation and lifting up. Or you know what? You could be listening to some information that could get you riled up, get you pissed off, make you want to go out and burn something, right? It's all about the influence. What are we listening to? What are we watching to? What's the music that we take in? Everything is an influence. Everything we take in. And the last piece of shifting our shit Ultimately, it boils down with our thoughts. So where we end is actually where we begin, because it all comes from a thought. And until we're willing to transform our thoughts, we're not going to transform our world. And I'm all about the transformation and living in the light and the joy. And I know that the only way that I can possibly do that is to first tell the truth to myself, about where I am, what are the thoughts that I'm holding, before I can begin to focus on what the world should be doing, before I can begin to focus on what my spouse should be doing, my children should be doing, or what I think the police should be doing, or what I think the government should be doing. And right now in this political arena and everything that's taking place, the real shift begins with me. It begins with you. It begins with us on an individual basis of how do I first take what I call the aerial view. And that aerial view is our ability to become our neutral witness. And being able to be a neutral witness is the opportunity to operate from awareness rather than judgment. And when I can operate from awareness, then I'm not stuck in my feelings. I'm not stuck in my position, but I'm able to take an aerial view and say, in shifting my thought, as I shift my thought, how do I transform my thinkingness to establish, one, better influences, two, better habits, which from this standpoint, I call practices. And the way to shift that is to go from a habit to a practice, creating practices that allow us to redirect our focus so that ultimately, as Heather so poignantly pointed out during that fire walk, is our ability to stand on our story and to repurpose our story. And when I look at the world right now, each and every one of us, not just in pointing a finger, each and every one of us individually, we have to take 100% responsibility for our story. What is my story? How do I shift that? Because see, when I shift my story, then I can be a better influencer on the world. When I shift my thinkingness, I can be a better influence. And Mother Teresa, in speaking to this, one of my favorite responses by Mother Teresa, when she was asked or invited to march against the Vietnam War, she said, I will not join you in a march against the war. However, I will join you when you have a march for peace. So that's what the shift is all about. And that's what I want to invite everyone to contemplate on, is not what you're against. Because you know what? Yes, I am against senseless death. I am against the slaughtering and the taking of Black lives. Yes, I'm against it. I want to be an advocate for humanity. And so that's the stance, is what am I willing to stand for? Not what I'm against, because the energy of what we're against is what creates that tension in the battle. But it's what are we willing to stand for? That's what Martin Luther King was a representative of. It's what we stand for, in the honor of John Lewis, who just recently departed. I love his terminology of getting into good trouble. He says, get into trouble, but good trouble. And so in that shift, it is still in the direction. See, creating good trouble is about standing up and moving forward for what I'm for. Because what I'm against, when I allow that energy, that's the energy of that negative aspect of the battling and the pushing against, is it saps my energy. But when I am so clear and I am so on point and I'm so purposed about what I am for, if you're not willing to stand for something, you will fall for anything. So when we're clear on what we're for, wow, that is so powerful. It is so powerful in transforming not just how we show up in the world, but how we just operate in our own daily living. It's how we get through a pandemic. Is what am I for here? You know, one of my favorite life questions that I often pose is, what is the thing for? So I ask you, for you, what is this moment for? What is the pandemic for? What is this Black Lives Matter movement for? We are, and you know, that's been such a misinterpretation around Black Lives Matter, because so often our thinking is what we're against. It is, we're not against white people. We're not against anyone, but it's the difference between the prefix and the suffix. It's not only Black Lives Matter. It is Black Lives Matter too, that we are for this moment of moving forward. And as we each begin to channel our energy, taking that stand to be able to focus our attention on what we are for is where real transformation takes place. So I want to share with you a formula. And this is a formula that I incorporate in all of the coaching and training development work that I do. It's the foundation of it. And I call it the Transformula. And before I share with you the formula, I want to really share with you how this formula came about. As Heather expressed, I'm launching a book on next Friday, actually my mother's birthday, August 28th. This is the second edition launch to In My Mother's Voice. And In My Mother's Voice is a collection of 30 quotes from my mother, the life lessons around those quotes. And during the time, and my mother passed away, and I wrote that book In My Mother's Voice as just my cathartic healing of getting through. And I often say that, you know, I ran my way into a marathon, because the way I started in writing the book, I would, well, first let me back up a little bit and say, when my mom passed away, it was 2001, and I call it, you know, my best of times and my worst of times. I was launching in my training and development company, and it built up a great list of clients, was really in this process of building and growth. And every time I would teach one of my classes, I would start with one of my mother's favorite quotes that she always shared with me from the time I was 5. And that is, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And I'm sure many of you have heard that quote before. And I was like, yes, yes. Now, when I first heard it, I thought, ooh, there's a magical teacher. Little did I know that this would become the pivotal quote for my life. And understanding that whenever we are prepared, when we get ready, the lessons are already in existence. We don't have to create the life lessons. They're already there. Our job is to prepare for them. And so I would share this in each of my training classes, that some of you might not be ready. Some of you might not get some of the information that I'm here to share with you today, but just know that when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And the right and perfect time, when you get ready to reach for that next lesson, you're going to remember, oh, this is what Jaaz meant. Right? So when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. So we don't always necessarily get the lesson right up front. So that being said, my mother was a quote meister, and was always spouting wonderful quotes to me as I was growing up. And when my mom passed, I was in the midst of, as I said, all of this growth and training, and things were taking place. And by the way, I said, as I shared, this was 2001. So it was like, what a year. My mom passed in April of 2001, and then my sister in July, a great friend, a dear friend, in August. And then guess what? 9/11 hits the next month. And at that time, I am working with the airlines and a part of the emergency response team responding to 9/11. So much going on. So when I tell you that was a moment of like, whoo, being in the middle of shifting my shit at the time, because it was like, oh, this is really the great stuff going on over here. But what is all of this madness going on over here? And when mom passed, I didn't have to, what I did was I took a deep dive into my work and into my training. And one of the things my mom and I used to do, we used to have our mad moments, mother and daughter, girlfriend chat on Saturday mornings. And occasionally, give her a call, and it would just be our time. Well, my mom passes in April, and I go into full organization swing, planning her burial, her memorial, and I was in operation mode. I never really took the time to grieve. And it was nearly 5 months later that one morning, because I was traveling consistently, one morning while I was at home, I rolled over to pick up the phone and I called my mother for one of those girlfriend chats. And what came through on the other line was my voice, because my mother's voice was no longer with us and I had changed her recording. And that's when it hit me. It just, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Mama is gone. I won't hear her voice anymore. And I had brought home with me a treasure box from mom, just keepsakes of things of hers. And for some reason, I always say it's synchronicity. You never know. Sometimes you don't know why, but in the right moment, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. I went into my closet and opened up this treasury box that I brought back, and I just sat on the floor because I could smell her smell, and I was going through her things, and there were a pair of tennis shoes in there. My mom and I happened to have worn the same size at the time, and so I put the shoes on. I went to trail and I started walking and talking with my mother. And as I was walking and talking, I ran about 1/8 of a mile, then I stopped. And every day I'd go back and I'd walk and I'd talk and I'd run a little bit further. And it went from 1/8 of a mile to 1/4 of a mile. And, one day I looked up and I'd run 3 miles and it was like, oh, wow. And so literally ran my way into a marathon. And what came to me during this time of my running was this transformula. And at the time, it wasn't called that. It was really about getting clear about what I wanted for my life at that point, getting clear intention. And I know many of you have heard, live from intention, right? Set your intention. So I was always, I was clear about the power of intention, but I was also in the midst of distraction, work going on over here, family going on, all these different things going on. And I also allowed myself to get caught up by the attractive distractions to avoid the feelings. And so what came to me was clear intention. And what I needed to do was to focus my attention. So it's clear intention plus focused attention equals divine retention. And that is the transformula. And that's what I invite each of you to begin to practice. It is my daily practice. And when I look, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. It doesn't matter what's going on outside of here. What's important is that I stand firm and clear about what my intention is. And it's that overriding intention, because we have what I call the many intentions, but the many intention that connects to the master intention. And for me, that master intention, my clear intention is about living a life in love. I'm going to let you sit with that for a minute. Living a life in love. And if I'm not living in love, I'm out of alignment with my intention. So what was important for me to do was to begin to look at, if I'm going to live a life in love, what need I do to do that, right? I could just set the intention, but if I'm being afraid and not connecting with the feelings, if I am reacting to what's going on in the outside world, then I'm not living from that place of love. So what was important for me to do, and what I do on a daily basis, is where do I need to direct my attention in this day to live into the purpose of my intention. And so I will only speak from my standpoint, and I invite you to identify what's that space that you want to live from and live into. And so when I am beset by anger or upset, one thing, the first and most important thing is don't deny the feelings. What I do is not to cover up that anger. Was I pissed off when George Floyd was killed? Absolutely. And Breonna Taylor, all of these senseless deaths? Absolutely. But what is my intention here? My intention is to live from love. And how do I do that? How do I best do that? And for me, what evolved out of that, matter of fact, the day after George Floyd's death, and if you were following my daughter, you may have heard, but my grandson was shot in the arm with what's called the less than lethal weapon by police in his arm, a rubber bullet. And it did still create a major fracture. And so needless to say, that was a disruption to our family. And it could have been a very reactionary moment. But what I chose to do was look at, how can I make a difference here? How can I come from a place of love to be clear of what my intention is, so that love becomes a force to transform? See, that's the thing. It's not going against, but it's how do I use love to transform that which I don't desire or want. And we, along with my daughter and I, created what's called the How to Thrive Task Force, Healing Our World to Thrive. And in that, it is a mission to bring together our communities with the police, to hear from each side and to look at what are some positive steps and implementations that we can create. And because I have a training background, it was to implement training that can assess, look at what's the mindset, assessing from a values and mindset standpoint, the individuals in the community, but most importantly, where our police are, and being able to implement some trainings into the community. So that's what I'm inviting you to do, is to look at whatever you might be going through in the midst of this pandemic, whatever anger you might be feeling, or wherever you're feeling the injustice, to be present to the feeling. Don't deny it. Connect with it, because it is true. So connect with it, and then ask the question, what is this thing for? What is it for? And out of that, what is my intention? What is my intention here? And then cultivate your focused attention that will transform your energy and shift your shit, literally. So that's the transformula, and that's how you use it. And I tell you, I use it on a daily basis. And on a daily basis, 2 powerful questions to be with: what is my intention, and where is my attention? And throughout the day, my intention is to check in with myself and ask, where's my attention? So if I'm a little bit off, rather than getting to the end of my day and shitting all over myself about what I should have done and how I should have handled the thing, that throughout the day, when I pose that question, it is non-judgmental. It is my neutral witness looking at me in a place of awareness to say, where's my attention? Oh, and then I can immediately create the shift. So I hope this has been helpful and useful information for each of you. I'm really honored to share with you, and I am so committed to living from a place of empowering not only my energy, but to empower each and every individual that I'm able to connect with, to know that we have the power to shift our world by shifting my world, by shifting this world. And if we can each say, I can shift, when I shift my world, I will shift the world around me. Because what we do when we do that is we shift our perspective. And when we shift our perspective, we are able to see greater possibilities of what we can do to contribute externally when we take 100% responsibility for that internal shift. So thank you for hanging out with me. I want to invite you to my online party release for In My Mother's Voice, and that's coming up August 28th. Again, that's next Friday. And I'm going to be hanging out on Facebook Live right here. I'll be hanging out from 10 in the morning till 11 at night. Now, every hour on the hour, there's going to be some wonderful In My Mother's Voice quotable moments, some special guests, a special promotion for that day, and some giveaways. And there's an intentionality behind this particular release date as we talk about the power of uplifting Black Lives Matter and moving forward as a community. My mother's birthday happens to be August 28th, but also what's most significant for us as a community is August 28th was the March on Washington, when Martin Luther King delivered the I Have a Dream speech. And I'm going to be sharing a moment from my book, that line where my mother actually spoke to her dream. And it is our time to not just live the dream, but be the dream, to take up the torch and to get clear about our intention individually so that we can share it collectively as a community, as a people, as a race, as a country. You know, this is called the US, which is us. And so let we become us, where we align our collective intention. So I really invite you to come and hang out with me sometimes throughout that day on August 28th during the launch of In My Mother's Voice. It's such a special piece that's so near and dear to my heart, which is why I even wanted to do this second edition launch, and especially at this point in time, hoping that some of these golden nuggets that I gleaned and learned from my mother, as well as other significant individuals in my life, can help to serve as a springboard to spring us into our best self so that we can now stand tall upon our story rather than being stuck in the mire and the limited beliefs of where our story was, because we aren't where we were. We are so much further, even in the midst of all that has taken place, even in the shitstorm that has taken place from all of the deaths and all of the injustices. We are in a better place in this worst of times because we are stronger, we are more united, we are more focused, we are more aligned. So I am calling up on all my brothers, my sisters, and each and every one of you. Let us stand up, let us speak out, and let us march towards what we are for. I love you all, and I just thank you so much for allowing me this time to share my stories, my habits, my influences, and my thoughts. So I invite you to go out and shift yours, because when you shift your shit, then this shift, the thoughts, the habits, the influences, and the story become our empowered platform of which we can all stand. So thank you all. Heather, I'll give it back to you.
Woohoo! Thank you. Mm-hmm. So good. And I love so much of what you were sharing around the Transformula and what are you for? Because I really agree with you. So often we get caught up in what's not working, what we're against, what we want to fight, what we're battling, instead of, okay, wait, let's flip that. Yes, there are things that are wrong. Yes, there are there's absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. And there's energy behind us when we remember what we're for. Because I really believe our ancestors aligned behind us are, the ones that are coming ahead, the ones that are coming next are standing, cheering us on.
Yes.
Everything starts to shift.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why this is such a special moment, because my connection with you was all about that. It was all about that shift, and walking through that fire is that ability to shift. And it was all about shifting the mind. It wasn't about, because the fire was the fire, the coals were the coals. They were as hot as they were. But what determined getting burnt or not was how I moved through it. Not if I moved through it, but how I moved through it. And that's what's so powerful. So thank you for just that divine moment.
Absolutely. I love it. And I can't wait till we get to Firewalk again sometime.
Yes, I am ready. So when you host the next one, I am there. I am there. And everybody, those of you listening, if you have not done a Firewalk with Heather, oh my gosh, take your shoes off. Look, get naked, get raw, get real. Walk those coals and shift your shit.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I want to share with everyone. Let me see if I can do this, because I was just looking at your website to share the look. So there's Genia and Jaaz. I just love this photo so much. I'm just like, I need to hug both of you simultaneously right now. So everyone, please go visit madmiracles.com. And also I shared on the chat Jaaz's Facebook page. So August 28th, mark that day. So you can go hang out with Jaaz as she launches her book. And the book will be coming out, In My Mother's Voice will be coming out on the 28th. Which is my first goddaughter's birthday. So I'm like, oh, it's so good.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, before I go, if I could share one last thing, because I definitely, I just want to give people an opportunity, and we still have some spots. When you go to madmiracles.com, our events page, we have an online event coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It's a taste of transformation. So if you want a little bit more of a taste of being able to make that shift, it's going to be Genia along with me, as well as one of my other energy coaches that's working with us. So we're going to take you through identifying the story and connecting with it in the body. And then Genia is going to wrap it up with cord cutting. And so that's this coming Saturday and Sunday. You can find all of the information on madmiracles.com/upcoming events. Yes.
Perfect. I just shared the direct link to that workshop. So there you go.
Beautiful.
Madmiracles.com. Go check out more about what Jaaz and Genia are up to. And honey, just so many blessings to you on the launch of a book.
Thank you.
I know how much goes into the midwifing and the crafting and there's so much. And so thank you for your willingness to do your own hard work. I mean, it was so tender when you were talking about the story of picking up the phone and not hearing your mom's voice, and when everything hits, and just the vulnerability and the tenderness of doing your own process so you could share your mom.
Well, thank you. It's my joy. Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. This has actually been a delightful wrap up, almost wrap up to the day. So I love it. Thank you.
Good. All the cycles, right?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe launch into the next manifestation.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, everybody, you can check out Heather with me next Wednesday. We're going to be hanging out. Yes, next Wednesday. Oh, I got to check the time. Next Wednesday, 6 o'clock. We're doing 6 o'clock next Wednesday. And I'm going to be getting some feedback from Heather on In My Mother's Voice, where she's going to share her favorite takeaway quote. So come check us out here on Facebook, In My Mother's Voice Quotable Moments, and you'll get a little golden nugget from Heather. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes.
It'll be so fun. So everyone go like whatever, follow, whatever you do on Facebook, on Jaaz's page, Jaaz Jones Facebook. It's on the chat. And then I'm sure you'll get a notification of all the people that are doing the quotes, which is so good. So
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jaaz, for all that you're doing. Keep doing it. Keep shining. I love shifting the shit, everybody. Let's do this.
Yes, let's do this. Absolutely. All right, my dear. Thank you again. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. I so appreciate you.